Here's your chance to win even more from the National Lotteries Authority when you play for 2 times daily. Choose 4 numbers from 0 to 9 and you can win up to $5,000 with a $1 inline bet.
Make sport and back it up too. That's right. There'll be lots of cash waiting for you.
Get your tickets Monday to Saturday for the Play for Midday Draw at 1:50 p.m. and the Play for Night Draw 9 p.m. So easy to play.
For, you'll win even more.
The National Lotteries Authority introduces the Lotto app for all Android and iPhones. Your free download available at nlasvg.com. Whether at home, work, or simply having fun, get all NLA game results at your fingertips. View all draws of the National Lotteries Authority on your handset or tablet with the user-friendly Lotto app. Download today at nlasvg.com. The Lotto app.
Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of Roundtable Talk. On this week's edition, we'll be talking climate change, desertification, biodiversity, the environment. How do our individual actions affect these areas? I have with me 2 of the international authorities on these subjects. In studio, Dr. Richard Byron Cox, who is currently the head of the Capacity Development and Innovation Office at the Secretariat of the United Nations Convention to Combat Diversification, and also expert Edmund Jackson, who is joining us by Zoom this evening. Welcome, gentlemen, 2 of my favorite people with me this evening.
It's nice of you to say that. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon to your audience. I'm glad to be here and I'm willing to share whatever I can.
Eddie?
Thank you, Teresa. I'm also happy to be here, likewise.
Okay, so first I'm going to ask each of you to tell us about your involvement in this field. What do you do and what are your areas of expertise, starting with you, Doc?
Right. Well, first and foremost, I'm an international law specialist and trained diplomat, international relations specialist. In my training as a lawyer, I also studied in international environmental law, which is the basis of my understanding of the environment from a law and policy standpoint. I joined the United Nations 25 years ago. I began as a lawyer, and I have been working in the field of sustainable development for a long time, and presently, as you said, I head capacity building and innovation. Now, there are 3 conventions which deal with sustainable development: the Climate Change Convention, the Biodiversity Convention, and the Land Convention. I work in that secretariat which deals with land, and over the years I have fulfilled different roles. I have been responsible for all the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, for example. I was once the Action Program officer, meaning all the national action programs to combat these problems, to deal with these problems. I spearheaded all of that. I read all of them. I designed many for countries and so on and so forth. Right now, my job is to help the world across the globe to develop the skills, capacities, abilities to address the question of sustainable development with a focus on land and managing land properly. And as I hope we will find out later, as you would see, that the nexus between biodiversity, climate change, right, is land. Everything is based upon land. And I can demonstrate that later. So basically that is what I've been doing for 25 years. A part of my job, which I'm very proud of, is that I go across the globe teaching universities. So I have taught from Oxford to the University of Bonn. I'm constantly in demand as regards a lecturer across the globe on the questions of sustainable development. And as you know, there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and Goal 15 deals with life on land, and there's Target 15.3. I had a lot to do with Target 15.3 last thing I would say, because we have limited time, is that there's something called land degradation neutrality, and I'm seen across the globe by many, not everybody, but by many, as the grandfather of this, because the first project to try and achieve land degradation neutrality was designed, managed, and implemented by me. So I've been in this business a long time.
Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the program. Eddie, you are still relatively fresh from your stint in Brussels, and you're back on the ground. So talk to us.
Yes, well, my journey started as far back as 1998, where I joined the Environmental Services Unit in the Ministry of Health and Environment at that time. And actually spent 14 years in St. Vincent, and when I left in 2012, I was the director of the Environmental Management Department. During my time in St. Vincent, I was actually the national focal point for all of these three conventions: the Climate Change Convention, the Biodiversity Convention, and the Land Degradation Convention. So I have a good bit of experience in all of these conventions, and I've attended many meetings during the course of my career while I was here. I left here in 2012, and I got a job as Environment and Climate Change Program Officer at the ACP Secretariat at the time, an international organization based in Brussels, in Belgium. It is now called the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, where I spent 8 years. I returned in 2021 after my stint in Belgium. And during that time, I also had a chance to implement a number of different projects dealing with these same conventions, funded by the European Union. So I have a lot of experience there as well. My background is natural resource management. I studied in Mona, zoology, and I also studied in Kville, at the Kville campus, natural resource management at Surrey. So that is basically my background. One of my earliest meetings at the international level was actually attending UNCCD meeting in Bonn, Germany, and that's where Dr. Cox held my hand at that particular meeting. So I'm very also grateful to him. So he is also one of my favorite people. So that's it for me in terms of background.
Okay, what's happening now that you're back home? What project are you working on?
Now that I'm back home, I'm in the Economic Planning Division, and I'm working on a SEDIMA program that deals with disaster recovery since the unfortunate volcanic eruptions of April 2021. And so we are trying to help a number of different ministries implement activities which will help them to build capacity as well as to recover from the physical damage that occurred during that eruption. So that's what I'm working on now for the last couple of months, since April.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Both of you have a wide array of experience. I want to start the discussion by asking you to define sustainable development for us.
Okay, well, the understanding of sustainable development comes from something called the Brundtland Commission of 1983. And this process had begun with the Rome Conference and so on, and many other conferences before, but the actual understanding came out of the Brundtland Commission of 1983. And it's basically development which can happen today, tomorrow, and forever. In other words, we don't develop in such a way where we compromise the future, but that the development that we pursue now, okay, allows for development to continue in the future for generations to come. In other words, what we must not do is that in our development process, destroy the future. In other words, the resources must remain or even get better, for the future. Now, as you might know, there have been different developments where after a while the resource run out and you have to shut things down. Copper mines and so on in Central America can demonstrate that, But even in terms of agriculture, if you look at Haiti, for example, 150 years ago, the soils in Haiti were the best soils anywhere in the Caribbean and produced a lot of sugar. Now, Haiti is basically a desert. As you know, Haiti shares the island of Hispaniola. One side is called the Dominican Republic, the other side is called Haiti. If you fly over the island, one part is brown, the other part is green. You understand? The kind of development that took place has not allowed for development to continue. And so what you find is that past generations has sacrificed the future. Sustainable development is development that can continue today, tomorrow, and forever. Basically, that's what it means in ordinary terms.
Okay. Eddie?
No, I think Dr. Cox says it all. The three pillars of sustainable development, environment, economic, and social, both of those, the environment and the social, actually depends on the environment. So most of the natural resources that people depend on, that lives depend on, if we don't protect the environment, then obviously those other two will actually suffer. And that is what has been happening for centuries. But with technology and with advancing knowledge, we are now moving into the realm of protecting the environment more, so that we could actually achieve sustainable development. Thank you.
What do you think are the particular challenges that affect the region, our region, and impact on our own sustainable development?
Well, these challenges are many. Yeah, they're not. We can discuss this whole night, but I'll basically say these three things. Firstly, awareness, education. In other words, we don't even understand that we have the challenge. We don't even realize that this is something that we face. For example, if you were to take the Caribbean, right? There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals. How many governments in the Caribbean, although all of them have signed on to it, how many of them have tabled this in the parliament and said, this is where our country is going to go? But how many of them has made it their business to make it public knowledge so that everybody in this country understand that we need to aim for sustainable development? How can people aim for sustainable development if they're not aware of it, if they don't know what it is? That's the first fundamental problem we have. The second fundamental problem we have is that these are very small countries. So this is a country with 110,000 people. America has 350 million people, right? China has 1.5 billion. India has 1.3 billion+ people. We are a tiny state. And the question of sustainable development is a global question. It is not a national question. It's not a regional question. It's a global question. The question we have to ask ourselves is this: what is the role of a tiny state and what can we do? You understand? For example, the emissions affect us most. We have all these storms and floods and droughts and so on and so forth. But our contribution to this fiasco, to this problem, is minuscule. You understand what I'm saying? So that's the second problem that we have. The third problem that we have as regards this is a political commitment across the region. How strong is that political commitment? Because politics drives everything. Science does not rule the world. Policy runs the world. If you want proof of that, if you remember, there was a man called Donald Trump, and America was part of the Paris Agreement, the climate change Paris Agreement. As soon as he became president of the country, he said, we are out of this. This is nonsense, because science does not run the world. Policy runs the world. You understand? And unless we have a policy which is driven by an understanding that the Caribbean needs to aim at sustainable development, then we seriously have a problem. Eddie can add the other list of things, but those are three basic things that I think we need to understand in terms of dealing with sustainable development.
Okay, we'll talk some more about those things when we come back after this, our first break. Back in just
The National Lotteries Authority introduces the Lotto app for all Android and iPhones. Your free download available at nlasvg.com. Whether at home, work, or simply having fun, get all NLA game results at your fingertips. View all draws of the National Lotteries Authority on your handset or tablet with the user-friendly Lotto app. Download today at nlasvg.com. The Lotto app.
Doctor, when we took the break, you were saying that policy runs the world, not science. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Okay, I would not be long, but I would demonstrate it very simply. I think you know that we have what are called nuclear weapons in this world. And the science proves to us that we have enough nuclear weapons to destroy this planet, to completely destroy this planet. But the policy is to create more. The science tells us it is useless to us. What we're going to do is to destroy ourselves. That's what the science says. But the policy is no. We have to have world defense. You understand what I'm saying? And that is the policy. Let me give you another example. By the time this program is finished, Miss Teresa, by the time this program is finished, four species in biodiversity would have disappeared from this planet, never to return. You understand? So we should have a policy of protecting the biodiversity of this planet. But our policy is what? To make money. The dollar counts, not the biodiversity, because that's the policy. Science is about facts, reason, evidence. Okay? Policy is about interests. Okay? So just to give an example, we just had the Conference of the Americas, right? This world is a world of diversity. This world is a world, you're a woman, I'm a man. One person is black, another person is white. One person is short, another person is tall. But the Americans say that everybody must be like us. And if you're not like us, then you're not invited to the Americas. You understand what I'm saying? Right? Because that is what? Policy. That's not science. Science tells me that St. Vincent's is a small country, but we're in the Americas. America is a big country, but they're in the Americas. Science tells me that Haiti speaks French, but they're in the Americas, right? And so science also tells me that Brazil speaks Portuguese, but they're in the Americas. And if we're in the Americas and we have an American meeting and all the Americas should be together, but the American policy is that you bow to me. And if you don't, you understand, then we're going to have a meeting of the Americas, but without you. That's the policy. That's not science. Policy runs the world, not science. And it is when there is a dissonance, when policy is poorly informed by science or not informed at all, then we make terrible mistakes. You understand? But science doesn't run the world. Policy does.
Okay, so tell us, what is biodiversity? What do we speak of when we talk about biodiversity? And maybe Eddie can come in here, and then
I think Eddie should take that first, and then yes.
Well, I want to go back a little bit. One of the challenges that leads to unsustainable practices is the issue of poverty. And as a developing country and a number of developing countries within the region, I think that is one of the reasons why this is one of the first sustainable development goals, to address and alleviate poverty. And I think that is also a challenge that we have to grapple with as a small island developing state. If we are living subsistence fishing, subsistence farming, then we need to move to value-added products. So we could move large part of the population out of poverty, and then we move away from unsustainable practices. Biodiversity is anything, plants, animals, species, from the smallest animal that you do not like, the mosquitoes, to the largest animals within the sea. And each of these are integrally interconnected. And this is why we need to, as much as possible, protect them. If we go to overfishing and there's the loss of one species, and more than likely there are a number of species that would have depended on that one. And so it breaks down an entire system when we lose species. And this is why it's so important that we try to protect as much as possible our biodiversity. This has to do with both plants and animals that basically life depends.
You see, the word bio means life. And diversity means differences. So biodiversity is all the living things on this planet, all, right? The diversity of living things on this planet, be it a snake, be it a mosquitoes, Eddie, and so on. What is important is this, as Eddie has pointed out, that the very life of the planet, right, all of this is integrated together, and we cannot see them separately. Okay, we have this understanding, and a part of it is religious, of course, that man is the supreme, on this planet as a living thing, because he has a soul and he has a conscious mind. You understand? But that is not how the planet works. And if you don't believe me, the most recent thing we have is monkeypox. Just before that, we had COVID-19. Now, these are called what? They're called zoonotic diseases. In other words, diseases which originate in animals, right? Zoonosis is about diseases which comes from animals, okay? Now, what it shows to you, Madam Teresa, is that your health is connected to the health of the animals on this planet. You understand? H1N1, avian flu, all of these things came from what? From animals. The last 30 years, 35 years would show to us that these zoonotic diseases are constantly on the rise. You understand? COVID-19 was the one that really hit us really, really hard and shut down the planet economically. Okay? I mean, flight stops, all sort of stuff, 50 million and more people lose their jobs in the United States alone. You understand what I'm saying? And society stopped functioning. We didn't have carnival for 2 years, so you couldn't jump up and think, You understand, right? And we have to understand, until we come to that understanding of one health, that human health depends on the health, not just of animals, but of the ecosystem as a whole, we're in trouble. So the question of biodiversity, in other words, the diversity of life, you understand? Unless you see that connection. Look, if you look at your own house, let's give us a simple example. If you have 2 or 3 lasers in your house, you have less flies. Have you ever noticed that? Because they eat the flies. Think of that for a moment. If you think of a river with frogs, you understand, a stream with frogs, right? And a stream without frogs, you'd see a lot of flies flying around that little set of water. With frogs, they disappear because the frogs eat them. It's real. You see, it is that kind of understanding, that kind of awareness that we need when we talk about the environment and biodiversity.
What is the role of human activities, or what role do humans play in the preservation and protection of the ecosystem?
I wonder if you want to go to Eddie first, and then I'll come back and because I have something very profound to say about that.
Okay.
Very, very profound. But we should go to Eddie. Eddie, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, just a couple of examples. I think when you look at the difference in how different sets of people live, and you notice that there are still tribes that live deep in the forests in places like Guyana, who have respect for the fact that the forest is their life, and so they live in a sustainable manner. They farm, they eat, they reap, all in a sustainable manner to ensure that they have food for the future generations. And so I think if we have more of a respect for Mother Earth and the things that it provides, those that we can see and those that we cannot see, like even oxygen and fresh water, I think then there will be a greater understanding from the people, and so there will be a lot more protection of its resources that will depend so much. I think that awareness plays a big role, and I think that while awareness alone does not bring about a change in practice, it's a start, and we need to have a continuous awareness program so that people will understand and it will become part of their life to protect the environment. Simple things like throwing garbage in the rivers, how you dispose of your waste at home. All these things would impact the environment at some point in time, even though the environment is very resilient and it can bounce back once it is actually cleaned up. But I think awareness plays a big role, and I think persons must be aware to treat the environment much better in order so that life can continue.
Yes, you'll forgive me for being a little bit philosophical now, but I have to be. The father of evolutionary biology is a man named Charles Darwin, and he wrote a book called On the Origin of Species. All right. At the end of his life, well, not at the end of his life, but during his lifetime, he said man's noblest trait is how he treats the lesser living beings. That's one. There's a Russian writer. For me, he's Russia's greatest writer. His name is Fyodor Dostoevsky. And Dostoevsky said this. He said, man, you boast about how noble you are, but everywhere you have gone, you have caused destruction to this planet. Last but not least, Eddie mentioned Guyana and people living in the forest and so on and so on. There's a man named Chico Alvarez Mendez. We know him as Chico Mendes. He's a Brazilian. He was murdered, you understand, by the plantocracy in Brazil. Chico was a rubber tapper. As Eddie was saying, they learned to live in communion with the environment. Mm-hmm. And they started to chop down the trees. And so he wanted to save his job. Before he died, he said this. He said, when I began this mission, Chico learned to read when he was 18 years old, right? He said, when I began this mission, I thought I was trying to save my job. And then I thought I was trying to save the rubber trees. And then I thought I was trying to save the Amazon. And now I realize I'm trying to save humanity. The point is this is the point, that what we have done, we human beings, is to destroy this planet in the name of $1, in the name of our own profits. Understand? And unless we understand that we have to stop this, listen to me carefully now, because I said I'm going to say something profound, and I mean that. Your SUV or your $1 million in the bank, none of that has intrinsic value. And you probably say, this is a madman. It doesn't. It really doesn't. If you don't have your SUV now, nothing is really going to happen to you unless you might have to walk home and then, somebody can get a job, right? If you don't have your $1 million in the bank, nothing is really going to happen to you that people are going to see you as being poor. There are 3 things that you need, especially in this Caribbean here. You don't even need clothes. What you need is food, oxygen, and water. These 3 things.
We'll take a break and come back and follow up on that
All right.
during our next segment. Back in a moment.
Here's your chance to win even more from the National Lotteries Authority when you play for 2 times daily. Choose phone numbers from 0 to 9 and you can win up to $5,000 with a $1 inline bet.
Make sport and back it up too. That's right. There'll be lots of cash waiting for you.
Get your tickets Monday to Saturday for the Play 4 midday draw at 1:50 p.m. and the Play 4 night draw 9 p.m. So easy to play.
For, you'll win even more.
Oxygen.
Yes. Now, I don't know if you know this, but science has proven that the average person would live 60 days without food, 6 days without water, and 6 minutes without oxygen. Right? You don't have to believe me, You can just cock your nose now and close your mouth and see how long you'll live without oxygen. You'd start to turn blue, then pink, and then you will die. It's elementary truth. You understand? If you don't drink water for 6 days, you don't drink liquids for 6 days, do you know that your body, you understand, 80% of your body is really water. You understand? Right? And of course, you can't live without food. You could live naked, In this tropics here, you could live naked. You can live. Now, the question is, which of these 3 you can have without the environment? Could you name it for me, please? Which of these 3? As far as I was told when I was a child, I was told that the trees take in carbon dioxide and they give off what? Oxygen. You remember that from primary school, right? Right?
Yeah.
Could you tell me what kind of food you would get without the land? Name it, please. And where's the water stored? It comes from the rain in our case, but it stores in rivers and reservoirs and so on the land. You understand? Fundamentally speaking. Now, you say, oh, so you believe that money is the interesting thing. Well, let me tell you this. As simple as this. I'll give you all the money I ever had in my life. You understand? But you promise me that you're not going to buy any food with it, you're not going to buy any water with it, and you're not going to buy any oxygen with it. What you're going to do is put the money in front of you and pray to the money and say, money, please, 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 produce water. Please, 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 produce food. Please. It cannot. And if I have this bottle of water and I refuse to sell it to you, and you're thirsty, you're going to die. Money has no intrinsic value. If you don't believe me, you can look at, let's just take the First World War. The German mark before the war was very powerful. By 1919, when the Treaty of Versailles was signed, you understand? The mark had collapsed. It's the same money, It's the same piece of paper with the same stamp on it. You understand? To buy a bread, you had to take a wheelbarrow of German marks to buy it. The same German marks. It has no intrinsic value. Water has an intrinsic value. If you don't drink it, you will die. That's why you come here, I'm looking for whiskey, but look where you give me. You understand? Food has an intrinsic value. And so to oxygen. You understand? And none of that can be had without a proper ecosystem. We are destroying this planet. The battle now, Teresa, is not to save life on this planet, The battle is to save the life of the planet. I hope you understand the difference. The battle now is not to save life on the planet. It's to save the life of this planet. So the challenge that we have ahead of us is a tremendous one. And this Caribbean of ours, climate change, biodiversity, and land degradation, we're at the forefront of it, my sister. At the forefront. And I can demonstrate that quite easily.
Go right ahead.
Look, let's take land. Let's just take land. Eddie mentioned that the people in Guyana, they live, in communion with the forest and so on. Guyana is a huge country now. It has 83,000 square miles. It's double Cuba, basically. Cuba is 44,000 square miles. And Cuba is 10 times Jamaica, which is 4,000 plus square miles. St. Vincent is what? You would know, I don't have to tell you, right? So let us put it very simply as I put it this morning on the radio. Brazil is a shepherd with 3 million sheep. It's a huge country. Guyana is a shepherd with 300 sheep. St. Vincent is a shepherd with 1 sheep. It's a tiny country. If Brazil loses 3,000 acres of productive land, that's nothing. Still a shepherd. You have much more to go. If Guyana loses 1,000 acres, still a shepherd. But we are a shepherd with 1 sheep. If we lose 300 acres of productive land, St. Vincent is in crisis. Do you understand me? We're the shepherd with 1 sheep. Mm-hmm. That's simple truth. Let's deal with climate change. I think it was in 2017, right? At least 6 or 7 countries was destroyed in this Caribbean from the storms. You understand? A matter of fact, you would remember, you should remember, that when we were in primary school and they were preparing us for the hurricane season, we had a little poem. We used to say, June never too soon, July stand by, and so on and so on. And by the time we reach October, all over.
November, all over.
All over. You remember that? Mm-hmm. But left-handed Lenny lick we up Christmas Eve day. You remember that?
Was it Christmas Eve or was it in November?
No, Christmas Eve day, 2013. Eddie, can you remember 2013? When left-handed Lenny lick we up? It was Christmas Eve day. Christmas Eve day.
Okay.
And all was supposed to have been over by November.
I remember. I don't think it was called Lenny though, but I know you're talking about. No,
it's left-handed Lenny.
You're talking about
because it
storm.
Came from the other side. That's why we call it left-handed Lenny, because usually the storm comes off the African coast, come across the Atlantic and lick us up. Lenny came the other way around. That's why it's called left-handed Lenny. Came the other way around.
Okay, I thought left-handed Lenny was in November.
No, Christmas Eve day.
Okay.
Christmas Eve day. Can you imagine when you're roasting your pork, all kind of thing? That never happened before, according to the records that we have of hurricanes. Something serious is happening, and we in the Caribbean are at the forefront of it. There's no if and buts about that.
And how do we handle these sorts of challenges? I mean, we say it's nature, isn't it?
No, and that's what Eddie was talking about a while ago, human action, and that is what we have to be concerned with, human action. The Industrial Revolution began in the 17th century, about 1640 or so, right? And since that time, we have changed this planet completely. As I said to you, every hour, 4 species disappear from this planet, right? Listen to me. Listen very carefully what I'll tell you. The FAO and the World Population People says that by 2050, we're going to have 9 billion people on this planet. As a boy, the first time I ever heard about this planet's population, it was 3 billion. As a little boy. In my lifetime, therefore, you understand, we have moved from that. I might not live until 2050, but we're close. And guess what now? They're wrong. So you say, who's this boy? But this is arrogance now from Byron Cox. No, it's not. When they made that calculation, China had not yet changed its one-child policy. It has since done so. So logic tells me, you understand, that the 9 billion they forecast, unless something seriously goes wrong, is going to be more. But this planet cannot stretch. We cannot stretch the planet. We cannot make the planet bigger. You understand? So we're going to need more food, more water, more energy. We're going to need these 3 things from the very same size planet. Yes, Eddie mentioned the issue of technology. But it was Malthus a long time ago who had predicted that we're going to come to this point. Of course, he did not foresee what technology could do in terms of food production. But we know the consequences of that as well. So we have a serious question in our hands. The question we have to do now, or the thing we have to do now, is to make sure that children at Catholic school and Anglican school and Lodge Village, where I went to and so on, are prepared now, are educated now to understand that we are talking about their very survival in a very real way.
Should this become a part of the school curriculum?
Well, when I go to universities and they ask me this question, I like to tell white people what they did to us, to explain, to give an answer to that. Right? Now, the black people in these Americas, the majority of us were slaves. And we were denied the right to read and write, to count. We were totally illiterate, not because we weren't intelligent, but because that was the policy, because policy run the world. Now, but yet we survive. Guess why we survive? Because in essence, really, you don't need to know mathematics, physics, or chemistry to live. You need food, water, and, as I said, oxygen. Right? That is what you need to live. So in dealing with this, we have to now understand that the issue of sustainable development, the issue of a healthy ecosystem, the issue of the protection of the environment must be the first subject in every school across the globe, save and except two. Language, because language is what allows you to communicate. You understand? And mathematics, because it allows you to calculate scientifically. But those are the three subjects that must be taught in every single school across the globe if this planet is to survive.
Okay. We'll take a final break and come back and talk about the whole issue of the importance of land in all of this. We'll talk a little bit about your land degradation neutrality project and how all of these things tie together. Back in just a moment.
The National Lotteries Authority introduces the Lotto app for all Android and iPhones. Your free download available at nlasvg.com. Whether at home, work, or simply having fun, get all NLA game results at your fingertips. View all draws of the National Lotteries Authority on your handset or tablet with the user-friendly Lotto app. Download today at nlasvg.com. The Lotto app. Here's your chance to win even more from the National Lotteries Authority when you play for 2 times daily. Choose 4 numbers from 0 to 9 and you can win up to $5,000 with a $1 inline bet.
Make 4 and back it up too. That's right. There'll be lots of cash waiting for you.
Get your tickets Monday to Saturday for the Play 4 midday draw at 1:50 p.m. and the Play 4 night draw 9 p.m. So easy to play.
You'll win even more.
And Eddie, I'll probably bring you in here first before I get Dr. Cox to talk a little bit about the land degradation project, etc. So, Eddie, the importance of land in all of this.
Yeah, the importance of land. Um, for a country such as ours, this is what we survive on. Um, we know agriculture is most important to our country. Um, and protecting our land, protecting our soil is paramount. And likewise, if we don't protect our soil, then obviously it will impact our coast since we are so small, and that in itself will have impact on our fisheries. So land is very important to our food security. It's important to the nutrition of our people. And this is why the Ministry of Agriculture is so important and the work that it is doing on the ground. Um, and likewise, there is linkages to biodiversity and the bees that pollinate all the crops that we have. And this is also important so that pesticides that we use, we have to ensure that we protect the little animals that we don't seem to care about because their role is also important. So land is important from a economic perspective, from a nutrition perspective, it provides us with the food that we need to survive. So it is very important indeed, especially for a country like ours, because we don't have a lot of it, and we are supposed to, as much as possible, try to use the little that we have in the most efficient manner that we can.
So, the Land Degradation Neutrality Project, what does it or what did it seek to achieve?
Okay, great. Now, land degradation neutrality actually means, in elementary terms, that whatever we do in the future must not destroy any more land, any more of our bioproductive land. Okay? So in other words, our actions now must not harm the land anymore, right? And what we seek to do is to ensure that the lands which are degraded, right, are restored, okay? And the lands which are not degraded, we even help those as well. But the point is to ensure that the bioproductive lands, in other words, the lands that support forests, that support agriculture, food, etc., that support the animals, right, is not destroyed. So that in other words, we don't degrade any land. And so our actions become neutral as regards how we relate to land. Okay, that's what it actually means. Now, I was fortunate that when this idea came along, I was called in and said, and I was told, okay, how do we work this out? And, because I had been the Action Program Alignment Officer and all of these things, and I knew these things. So I sat down and designed a project aimed at achieving land degradation neutrality. 14 countries around the world took part in this. Only one Caribbean country, Grenada, right? But you had countries like Italy, Senegal, and so on, across the board, from across all the planets, from continents, participated. And we came up with the 3 indicators, which are now part of Goal 15 of land degradation neutrality. Okay? Now, you ask a fundamental question. And this is something I want to answer. I want to demonstrate this. It's important for us to understand. In dealing with climate change, we have to deal with something called carbon sequestration. The word sequestration in this sense just means carbon storage. It has to be stored somewhere. Okay? Mm-hmm. That is what the word sequestration actually means in real terms. So in order for us to fix climate change, we have to find a way that all the carbon that comes from motor cars and so on, from the burning of oil, and that escape in the atmosphere, that we can store this someplace, and therefore the planet does not become overheated. Mm-hmm. Now, where is that stored? It's stored in 2 places, right? 30% of it is stored in the oceans, 70% of it is stored on the land, okay? Now, the science tells us, this is what the science tells us, that stored on the land is stored in green trees. That's why you need forests to deal with carbon sequestration, okay? And in good soils, okay? Now, if you don't understand the soil argument, we'll come back to that, but let's deal with the forest argument. If you need green trees to store the carbon, okay, for carbon sequestration, right? Then tell me tell me this and answer this. Where are you going to plant the trees? In the sky? In the sea? On Mars? Where? The only place you can plant it is on land. And if the land is no good, is your trees going to grow? The answer to climate change is land. You asked me to tie it up. I've just tied it to climate change.
Yes.
Let's tie it now to biodiversity. Let us understand what we're talking about here. As far as I know, and if you know otherwise, you can tell me. But all biodiversity need a habitat, some place where it lives. And all biodiversity, as far as I know on this planet, either live in the sea or on the land. If you destroy the habitat of a biodiversity, what will finally happen to it? It will die because it has no place to live where it gets its food, where it gets its air, where it gets its water. There's a calypso in this country. His name is Gao. He sang a song called The Spray Plane. He said, the spray plane killing all the we label. I don't know if you ever heard that song. Mm-hmm. You must listen to it. You understand? Because when we started to spray the banana, all the little plants, that the label depended on to live, and the butterfly depended on to live, what happened? Those plants died. And so therefore, the biodiversity itself, the butterfly and so on died. Mm-hmm. Now that we stop it, have you noticed that the butterflies has come back? Have you noticed that? But there's a man called Winford Joker Devines. Winford Joker Devines. Devines was a calypso writer and composer. He died about 3 years ago. He wrote a song called Progress. I don't know if you ever listened to that song. It was sung by a calypsonian named King Austin. Mm-hmm. Understand? Mm-hmm. Today, when I look around in the world, what do I see? You must listen to that very carefully. Listen to that very carefully. Because here now, he's telling you how we are destroying our biodiversity. Mm-hmm. You understand? By destroying the land and destroying everything else. There is no way that the biodiversity that lives on land can live if its habitat is destroyed. There's absolutely no way. The nexus between climate change and biodiversity is land. And without that, please believe me. Look, there's a man, his name is Carl Sagan. He died a few years ago. He's an astrophysicist from America. And he said, as far as we know, in the multiverse, not the universe, the multiverse, because we only know about the universe. It's a multiverse. There are many universes. That's why it's called the multiverse. And he said, as far as astrophysics has demonstrated to us, the only planet that is able to support life in this whole multiverse, as far as we know, is this one. There's a man named Jeff Bezos. He owns Amazon. Jeff Bezos went up to space. It is said that his trip to space cost $258 million a minute. You know what I wonder? Why the hell didn't Jeff Bezos stay up there? Why did he come back down? And let me tell you why he came back down. Let me tell you why. Because with all the money that Jeff Bezos has, there are three things that he needs to survive. Water, food, oxygen, and food. Nothing up there can provide it for him. So he had to come back down. But I wish he had stayed there. I rest my case in terms of tying this thing up.
Well, it's a good note on which to end this evening's edition of Roundtable Talk. Very special thank you to Dr. Richard Byron Cox and to Eddie Jackson. So glad that you could join us this evening. We'll see you again next week, Wednesday at the same time. Good evening.